Hey engineers, so I want to start this by talking about what exactly we're doing in TinkerCAD and give you guys a little bit more information so you kind of understand everything that's going on there. So in TinkerCAD, we're working in 3D, which means that we're working in 3 dimensions. And what we mean by 3 dimensions is we're working in space like we're used to in real life. It's not just stuck down on a page, it actually comes up and out and moves around. So by 3 dimensions, what we really mean is that we need 3 measurements to decide or to define what something is. Okay. So that means we need 3 measurements to define an object. And we can look at that in 2 different ways that I'm going to break down right now. So we can look at this in terms of size, and we can look at it in terms of position. So I'm going to start with position first. So in TinkerCAD, the first 2 dimensions are decided by the work plane. So when you open up TinkerCAD, you're going to see there's like a grid on the floor. And TinkerCAD calls this the work plane. And when you place an object on the work plane, it can be anywhere on this grid. So it could be over here, or it could be over here, or you could even have it right in the center. Now, I'm not going to draw it because I'm not that great of an artist here, but in TinkerCAD, you can also have the 3rd dimension. So the first 2 are how far to the left and right it is, and how far to the front and back it is. So this is 1, and this is 2. Those are 2 dimensions. And the 3rd dimension is the height. So if you play with TinkerCAD, you can see that you can actually raise objects off of the work plane. That's the 3rd dimension coming into play here. So for position, we have left and right, we have forward, backwards, and we have up and down. And those are the 3 that we care about for position. For size, it's going to be a little bit different. For size, we're going to have our length, our width, and our height. And this is going to decide the size of something. So let's look at an example right here. So let's say we have a cube. So the 3 dimensions for this cube are its length, its width, and its height. So those 3 numbers define the whole cube. Now, when you're asked to scale something in TinkerCAD, that means that you're changing its size. And the only way to change something's size is to change its definitions. It's to change the dimensions that define it. So when you change the scale of something, you're going to be changing its length, its width, or its height. Now I do want to mention that sometimes we can get away with only having 2 numbers for this. And that's going to apply to things like cylinders and things like cones. And that's because those have a circle at their base. So if we look at a cylinder, we still have a height. I'm just going to label that H. So we still have a height, but when we try and do length and width, well, it's a circle. It's the same in every direction. So instead of saying length and width, we can just say diameter. And diameter is how wide a circle is across. Okay, now at this point, you guys have already played with these tools. You've already moved things around the work plane. You have already changed the scale of things. So this is kind of like a catch-up. So if you got through those lessons, but you're not sure what those definitions were, and you're not sure what it means for something to be three-dimensional, this is to get everybody on the same page. And now, with this information and a quick walkthrough on how to use all of this in TinkerCAD to its fullest potential, you guys are going to be creating or customizing your own design this week. So keep this video on hand because there are a few questions on this week's report from this. With that, you're going to be able to answer those questions, you're going to be able to make your new design, and you'll be able to finish this report. All right, that's it for this part. Now we're going to go ahead and move into those TinkerCAD controls.
All right, engineers. So this part of the video is going to be a bit of a quick rundown of a couple of different controls. I'm going to be going through some of the tutorials just to sort of show you guys how it works. You can come in and you can do these same tutorials on your own if you want some practice, but it's not required and they're not going to be part of the report. This is just like a quick reference so you can see all of it in one place. So the one that I'm going to start off with is camera controls, because something that we really haven't used very much is the view cube up here. So this view cube, it shows you what part or what angle you're looking at the workspace from. So for example, you can see we're looking at the workspace from kind of like we're slightly above it and to the front of it. And that's what the view cube shows. We're slightly towards the top and also towards the front. And if I click on the word front here, it's going to move so that we're directly in front of it. And the same thing applies to the edges. So if I click on this edge, we're going to be halfway between the front side and the left side. On top of that, you can also zoom in and out. Now this is easiest if you have a mouse with a scroll wheel, because then you can just scroll up to zoom in and scroll back to zoom out. But if you have a trackpad, you can also do this. It's going to depend on which computer exactly you have, but most computers will allow you to have 2 fingers on the trackpad and push up to zoom in and pull back to zoom out. Again, that was going to change by the exact computer, so I can't tell you exactly how your trackpad's going to work, but however you can scroll on web pages, it's going to work the same way. Now the main point of this tutorial here is to see the view cube and kind of interact with the scene. So in this case, we've got a stage with curtains on it, and by using the view cube, we can rotate around and find out who's about to come on the show. And it looks like this is a very famous performer. I think I'll make this a bonus question on the report. So if you can name this performer, that'll be kind of like an extra credit point. It can make up for if you miss any of the other questions. All right, so let's move on from camera controls to our next part, which is just moving things around. And this one is really just a tutorial, because at this point you guys all should know how to move things around the workspace. It's actually very simple. You just take your mouse, click on the object that you want to move, and now you can drag it around the workspace. Simple as that. Just click and drag. Now you do have to hold down the mouse button as you do it. Make sure you don't let go, or else it's going to get stuck in somewhere you don't want it to be. But even if that happens, you just click on it again and you can continue moving it. If you're working on a trackpad, again, this might be a little bit trickier. You might have to do a couple of steps if you drag it all the way to the edge of your trackpad, but even that is not such a big deal. All right, so let's move on from here to changing the size of something. Now we were just talking about different dimensions. So here we're going to be looking at the different dimensions and the different ways to scale something. So this is going to be a cylinder. So I'm going to add this cylinder to our workspace right in the center. And then I'm going to add a second cylinder right next to it, just following the directions here. And again, if you want to do this tutorial, it's called Scale, Copy, and Paste. And now we're going to change the size of these. So remember I said that we have 3 dimensions for these. So there's 3 different ways that we can define them. So if I look at this cylinder, this is asking me to shrink the cylinder. And the way that TinkerCAD shows that is with these white dots, or these white squares on it. So this square on top, this is what decides the height. So I can click on that square and I can shrink it down. I can scale it down by reducing just that one dimension. Okay, so that's a slightly shorter cylinder. And now I'm going to add a 3rd cylinder to the far side. And this one, oh, actually, there's even a different way that we can do this. So the same way that you can copy and paste in a document, you can do that in TinkerCAD as well. So you can click on an object, and if you press and hold Control on your keyboard, and then press C, that'll copy it. So now we have a copy stored. And now if you press and hold Control, and you press V, that's going to paste it. So you can see that pasted one extra cylinder right there. I'm just going to drag that into place, and you can see these two are identical. And once again, you can scale this one the same way. So grab the top dot and drag it down, and there you can see that we have changed the size and shape of this cylinder. Alright, and that's as simple as that. If you need to modify a shape, you just click on these dots and change their size. And if you need something to be exact, you can also type it in here like this. Alright, so that's scaling. And now, last basic tool, we're going to be looking at cutting out a hole in something. So for this tutorial, this one's called Creating Holes in TinkerCAD. We have a wrench here, but the wrench is not complete. Or actually, it's too complete. It needs to have an opening on this side so it can turn things. And the way that you're going to do this is very interesting. So we're going to get a shape, and that shape is going to be the shape of what we want to cut out. And when you drag a shape out, or when you click on it, you have the option to decide if that shape is solid or if it's a hole. And if you pick hole, you'll see it loses its color and it gets kind of this stripe effect on it. So now that represents like an anti-shape, the opposite of a shape. And in order to get this to cut a hole out of our solid object, what we're going to do is press Shift. So we can hold Shift on the keyboard, and I'm holding it down still. I'm going to click on the wrench, and I'm going to click on the hexagon that we have here. So now we have both shapes selected. And now I'm going to go up to the top right corner, and I'm going to click on Group. So this is going to combine the two of them. So we've got the anti-hexagon here, and we've got the wrench, and when we combine them, we're going to take a hexagon-shaped chunk out of the wrench, just like that. Now we can move it so we can see it. All right, engineers, so that is 4 kind of basic things that you can do in TinkerCAD. I know that we went through that really fast. So now let's take a look at what you guys are going to use this for. So for your report, I'm going to ask you guys to go into TinkerCAD. You're going to go and click on Learn. And from Learn, you're going to go to Lessons. And in Lessons, you can click on See All Lessons. And I'm going to ask you guys to come down here, and I want you to make the heart button. I'm going to see if I can give you guys a link to this as well, but if not, you can follow the steps right here. So in TinkerCAD, you'll go to Learn, then Lessons, then All Lessons, and I want you guys to make the heart button. And you guys can just click on this, follow the directions, and you're going to take a screenshot of your end result at the end. All right, engineers, so that's going to wrap this up for today's lesson. So make sure that you're paying attention throughout the video and make sure you fill out that report as well. Sorry if this video ends up running a little long. To make up for it, the report should be a little bit shorter than usual. So as always, good luck with your assignment, and just feel free to email me if you need any help along the way.